and one of the managers came in and said, "You know what this game is missing? Aliens." And they kind of laughed, and he's like, "No, I'm serious. We have to put aliens in the game now."
Hi, welcome to Work in Progress, a podcast about the work we do and why we do it. I'm here with Amber Scott. Amber Scott is an interactive director for Only by Midnight. Amber began her career in the tabletop RPG industry before moving into video games. As the interactive director, she works on writing and narrative design for the company's latest game, Negotiate. Thank you for being here, Amber.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Awesome. Well, it's lovely to have you here. One of the first things I like to ask folks is how they would describe what they do. So, what is it you say you do?
Well, my official title at Only by Midnight is interactive director, but I tell people I'm a writer. Most of my job is writing in one form or another, whether it's the in-game text that people will see when they play the game. So that could be dialogue or quest text or, descriptions of items that they see displayed on their screen. Or it could be narrative design, which is more behind the scenes. And we think of things like, what story are we telling? Who are the characters? What are their backgrounds? How are we going to structure the different plot beats in the game? I might write setting documents that describe what a certain level or zone of the video game looks like. And then I also do pretty much any other writing that my company needs. That could be loan applications, marketing text like our website content or tweets. Really, when you work in indie game development, you have to wear a lot of different hats. So if it involves words going onto paper or a screen, usually I am there.
So, how did you find out that this was something that you could get paid for? How did you discover video game writing as a job?
Well, it was kind of a long and winding road. Let me take you back to small Amber when she was like 12 years old, growing up in a small town in Alberta. And a friend of mine introduced me to a game called Dungeons and Dragons, which her older brother played. He didn't want to play with us because we were girls and his little sister. So we would steal his books and play Dungeons and Dragons in my basement with our friends. And I thought it was the most fun ever. It's an interactive story that you create with your friends, and you basically roll dice to determine certain outcomes. At the time, I didn't know this was a whole industry, that there were other games besides Dungeons and Dragons that did the same thing. And as I got older, I began to realize, oh, there's this whole business around what we in the industry call TTRPGs or tabletop role-playing games. And I'd always wanted to be a writer. So there was a point when I was in my 20s where I suddenly put these two things together and said to myself, wait, I like playing tabletop games and I like writing. Maybe I could write tabletop games. This was in the early 2000s, and the Dungeons and Dragons official publisher had two magazines, Dungeon and Dragon. And these were print magazines. It was long enough ago that you could go into a bookstore and buy a copy. And I thought this is how I can break in. So I started pitching articles to Dragon magazine. Eventually they bought one. And then I went to a convention and met the publishers there and kind of got to know them in person. Coincidentally, I moved to Seattle that year where their offices were located. And so I got to see more of them and eventually even started gaming with them, which was a lot of fun. And they started buying more articles from me unrelated to our gaming together. And eventually Wizards of the Coast, who's the publisher of Dungeons and Dragons, got in touch with me and asked if I wanted to write a rule book. And I said, absolutely. So I wrote a source book, and my career kind of snowballed from there. I spent about maybe 15 years in all writing for tabletop role-playing games freelance. At some point, I moved back to Edmonton in Alberta, and a friend of a friend let me know that there was a company in town called Beamdog that was making a Dungeons and Dragons video game, and maybe I would be interested in getting in touch with them. So I did, and they liked the way that I wrote. They liked the history that I had with Dungeons and Dragons. So they took me on as a contractor. And after I did some freelance work for them for a few months, they hired me full time, and I worked there for a few years writing a game called Baldur's Gate Siege of Dragonspear. I was part of a team of writers, and it wasn't just me. It was a good sized company, but still very indie, compared to some of the big names in the industry. And that was my intro to video game writing. A few years later, I had left Beamdog. I had moved to the Okanagan, and some friends of mine got in touch with me and said, "We started a video game company. We just sold our first game. We want to do a second one, and we need a writer. And we thought maybe you would be interested." I said, "Yeah, I am. I am, in fact, interested." And that was my friends at Only by Midnight. And I've been there for, I want to say 3 years now, 3 years and a little bit. So, and still going strong. So I hope to be here for a while longer.
You mentioned that in the beginning, you moved to Seattle and that you were also pitching yourself quite a lot. And it seems like networking played a really big part in the way you got started. Would you say that's still the case for folks now that it's that you also not only have to know what you know, but you have to know people?
Yeah, I think it can almost be one of the most important things. Not that you will only get jobs because somebody knows you personally and likes you, but it's how you hear about opportunities in the industry. It's how you hear about what other people are doing, and you can get inspired by what sort of projects they're working on. It's where you hear about new indie companies starting up where you might be a really good fit. And going to things like networking events and conventions, I find that they are just wellsprings of creativity. You get a whole bunch of indie game developers in a room. Somebody says something off the cuff, and all of a sudden we're riffing off each other and coming up with all these wild ideas for video games. And it's a way for people to almost see you in action and get excited about what you could bring to their company. And a lot of indie game studios are one person shows. So a lot of people will be doing it all on their own or with a couple of friends. And so going to an indie game convention or other kind of networking event puts you in touch with the people you're going to need to talk to eventually to finish your game. Because with a very few exceptions, one person cannot make a video game on their own. Sooner or later, you're going to have to hire an artist. You're going to have to hire a sound person. You might have to hire voice actors. Or maybe you want to release your game on a platform like PlayStation and you're not really sure how. So you want to talk to someone who's done that before. Or you want to apply for a loan or a grant and you're not sure what's out there. So you want to touch base with other people in the industry who have made that happen. So being able to just network, to put yourself out there, to make connections with people, I think it's a really critical skill if you want to work in video game development.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like that it's absolutely crucial, especially because when people get started, they're a little bit more isolated, like you mentioned when they're starting a video game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's very, very common right now for pretty much, unless you're really triple A video game studio like Microsoft or Sony, you probably are working remote. Either everybody works in their own place, or maybe you meet up at a co-work place once a week or something like that. But it can feel very isolating. There are a lot of great, Facebook groups, Discord groups, online communities where you can connect with other people. So even if you can't necessarily like get out of your house or there's no events in your area, you can still find people to connect with and talk about making video games. And it's a really welcoming industry in general. People are here because we love games. We want to make really cool ones and we want to have something that players are going to enjoy. So you're generally going to find a lot of support in the industry.
Great. Well, that's nice to know because in a lot of these larger centers, and especially since the pandemic, a lot of people aren't physically available as much anymore. But we do have tools like social media where you can connect. So that's a really great perspective.
Mhm.
Now, you also started off freelance, but now you're working for a company. Do you prefer one over the other?
It really depends what sort of, it really depends on what you're comfortable with.
Hmm.
I spent a lot of years freelancing and it's difficult, but you also get a lot of control over your own career. So if I'm working on a contract basis and something comes up, it's not working for me anymore. Maybe I've got other jobs already lined up. Maybe I can like graciously cut ties with this person and be done and move on and not have to worry that, oh, I put all my eggs in this one basket. On the other side, you don't have a lot of safety nets that you have when you're working full time, like healthcare or, you know, other employer benefits. You have to learn to do your own taxes. You don't get withholding. So I actually am incorporated. And so I do a lot of my writing work through my corporation. So I had to learn how to do corporate taxes or you have to pay somebody for it. So there's a lot of trade offs that you have to think about when you're contracting freelance versus like full time employment. Everybody's going to have a different answer. I've gotten used to sort of the uncertainty of freelancing. When I started writing, it was all, nobody ever was a full time writer back then. Now companies like Wizards of the Coast are more likely to have a writing staff, I think, um, compared to when I first started in the industry. It's a lot more common now for companies to realize it's worth it to invest in a writing team that's going to be there day in and day out and really learn how to support the company's goals. But yeah, you get used to sort of living on the edge when you're a freelancer and you're not always sure how much money you're going to make this year or how frequently work is going to come in. So it's it's exciting and different.
Now, you mentioned writing teams or staff writers as well. When you're in that team environment, are generally all the writers working on their own projects, but they're together, or are you collaborating with other people in that scenario?
It depends on the project and the structure of the company. I think it's really common to have writing rooms. We've heard this term a lot this last year with the writer strike that's going on in LA or was going on until recently. And that's the idea that writers get together and brainstorm and work together at a high level to come up with an overarching narrative or the overall theme of the game or movie or whatever it is that they're making, and then break off from there into individual tasks. So right now we're working on prototyping a game that hasn't been announced yet, so I can't tell you any details except that it's great.
Mhm.
And we're in the early stages of figuring out how we're going to build this game. And the way it's working right now is we have a small writing team, which is myself, my boss, Jen, who's one of the founders and co owners of Only by Midnight, and another writer named Ariel, who is a writing consultant. So she has a specialization in the, the theme of the game that we're writing, um, as well as experience in digital marketing and social media management stuff. So the three of us will get together on Discord. We'll have a topic prepared and we'll say, okay, today we're going to talk about characters. What sort of characters are we going to need in this game to tell the story that we want to? And it may start out with, I think we should have, character A. I think we should have character B. We should have someone that's an ice cream salesman. Oh, we should have someone who collects classic cars. And we'll just kind of work off each other and try and dig down onto a deeper level where we're not just coming up with a bunch of ideas to fill up a document, but we're saying why. Why would an ice cream salesman be there? Oh, I get it because of this. That plays in really well to the story we want to tell. That goes back to our theme. I'm really big on theme. That's like my pet thing this year is telling people how they all need to come up with themes for their video games. Um, and it's really fun, creative energy where you're just trying to come up with these ideas that are going to all work together and that you're all behind. It creates buy-in for the idea when you all feel like you're included in creating this this project. And then as we get farther along in development, what will likely happen is uh, Jen usually takes on the role of project manager. She's our producer is her official title, as well as our narrative director, creative director. And she'll come up with some timelines and say, all right, Amber, I need you to like write out these 6 character bios. Ariel, I need you to make these like 3 setting documents. And then we'll get together to review and incorporate what we've been writing. But we won't necessarily need to all meet up and work together unless we've hit a roadblock or we need to like come up with some new ideas for whatever reason. And we need to go back to that high level of planning. And then once things are implemented in the game, we all tend to get tend to get together and do closed play tests where either somebody in the company or a trusted friend or family member plays what we have so far and critiques it for us. And then we all sit together, not just the writing team, but programmers, art, um, and say, is this the game that we want to create? Is this working? What do we have to change? Is there a better way that we could do something so it's clearer to the player what we're trying to accomplish? So there's a lot of like going apart, coming together in the course of development.
Okay. Do you ever have really heated arguments with other people on the team about why you think this character needs to be there and the other person thinks they're not, for example, like that? Do you ever have heated arguments?
I wouldn't say heated arguments. We definitely can disagree.
Mm.
Uh, we're just all very like chill people, so it's a great place to work in that. We're all very like mellow and respectful, and if we were, really upset about something, we'd be more likely to cool off. But we can dig in. Like if I'm convinced something is the right way to do something, I'm not shy about saying it. And in the end, it goes up to, the bosses to make the final call.
Mm.
And that's the way it works at our studio, which is really nice. And it's all about if you can make a case to support what it is you want to say. Um, in the game Negotiate, which we're making now, one of our um, one of our questions that we were trying to answer is how real is this? Is it going to be a game where you get to the end and it was all a simulation? Like, I don't know if there was a whole bunch of movies in like the late 90s, early 2000s where reality isn't real,
Oh,
like
I
The
remember
Matrix
those.
and The 13th Floor and stuff like that.
Mm.
We're like, because our protagonist is a computer program inside a computer, how can we be sure what they're seeing is real? And I was like, I don't want to do that. And here's why. And I gave all my reasons from a writerly perspective about why I want the player to end the game feeling certain that what the protagonist experienced was real. And everyone kind of thought about it. And in the end, we came to the consensus that, yeah, we're going to do it that way. And so it was a really good experience because everyone had a chance to like say their piece. Everyone had a chance to feel like they were being heard. But in the end, somebody's got to make a decision. And that's why the bosses get paid the big bucks.
Now, a lot of people associate video games with violence. Do you have any opinions on like whether or not violent video games affect us?
I don't.
Mm.
I leave that question to wiser heads than I. I'm positive that yes, people can be influenced by media. Um, there's a reason that companies spend millions of dollars on Super Bowl ads because they want to get the right message in front of the right people at the right time.
Mm.
I don't think they would do that if there was no evidence that, commercials actually sell products. Um, but I think there's room for a lot of different kinds of art in the world. Some of it's going to be violent. Some of it is going to be nonviolent. One of the interesting things about Negotiate is that it's a nonviolent video game. There isn't any killing. There isn't any fighting mini games or fighting mechanics. It's a game about making deal, and it's a game about relationships. And I think it's becoming more common in today's sort of industry for people to explore a lot of different kinds of games when they're creating. Indie game devs can make all sorts of really fascinating and interesting games that don't really fit in the standard narrative that people think of when they think of video games.
Mhm.
One of the big games this year that came out was called Dredge, and it's a Cthulhian fishing simulator. You like sail around in your little boat and hunt for mysterious fish that might have some kind of like supernatural influence on them.
I never
There's
would
no
have put
fighting,
fishing
there's
in
no
a video game.
there's uh, a game creator at a conference recently who's making a game that is all about fish. And it's like a fish bowl simulator. And I wish I could remember the name, but I think it's just called the fish game or something. But it's people can make all sorts of different games. Stardew Valley is one of my favorite games, critically acclaimed, which is a farming simulator. You just like wander around your happy little farm and have cows and chickens. And there is fighting in that game, to be fair, but you don't have to do the fighting if you don't want to. You can completely skip it. It's optional. Um, Yeah, so I think there's a lot of room for different kinds of games to tell different kinds of stories in in the industry right now.
Hmm. And it's interesting too when you spoke about negotiate and about how it's about relationships and it's about making deals. It's kind of it's cool that it's a different skill set as opposed to the uh, hand-eye coordination that would be required in something like a more violent video game, but this is more strategic. I suppose all video games could be more strategic and violent if they wanted to be, but it's interesting that there's a shifting focus and that there's a lot more space.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. There's a lot more space. People are willing to play lots of different kind of games. One of the big inspirations for me coming in to negotiate was a game called Papers, Please, which was critically acclaimed as well. It's a great game. And it came out gosh, a while ago now. But the whole story of Papers, Please is you play an immigration officer in a fictional country that's kind of coded to be like Eastern European, maybe Russia or something like that. And you're working the border crossing and people come through and you have to check their papers. And if they match all the criteria, you can let them through. And if they don't, you have to turn them away. And you get paid based on how many correct judgment calls you make or correct calls you make. But as the game progresses, people start to tell you their stories. They're there for medical treatment. They lost their passport. They're refugees. How do you reconcile your own personal ethics with what's happening in the game? And needing to, and it's a very demanding game. It's basically a matching game. You have to see like, does their passport number like match the format? Does their picture look like the person? Do they have the right seal from? And it gets more complicated as it goes on. But really, it's about challenging your own beliefs about an issue that's as tangled as immigration, and doing it really like brilliantly in a 6 hour experience. So I was like, wow. I finished Papers, Please, and I had to go like lay down on the couch for a bit and just like think about what I'd done. And I wanted to try and capture that in a game. Um, the idea of human relationships being transactional in nature. I'll give you this if you give me that. The idea that we're always negotiating on some level to try and come up with something that works for both of us. My bosses are parents, and one of the big inspirations for the game was just trying to get their child to bed and going, like, I don't, I have to brush my teeth first. Okay, brush your teeth, then you go to bed. But if I brush my teeth, can I have a glass of water first? Okay, you can have a glass of water. Can I have juice? No, you can't have juice. What about milk? Like that's a negotiation right there. He wants another hour of awake time and they want him to go to bed. And where's the middle ground going to be? So trying to capture that in a video game has been really fun.
So, switching gears a little bit, what is a common myth that you hear about your job or your field of expertise? Do people think you play video games all day?
I mean, I try to play video games all day as much as I can. Sometimes I get away with it. Sometimes I actually have to, do real work. But yeah, there's a lot of ideas about what video game development is like. Playing video games all day is something you might do if you're in QA, which is an incredibly important part of video game development if you're testing. One of our staff members was playing our game every day to test new mechanics and to make sure that new cards are going in right or if a bug has been fixed. And that can be challenging. It can be tedious. I I'd say for me as a writer, the biggest myth or misconception that I hear is that you have to know a lot about computers to write video games. I'm not a programmer and I don't know how to program. Compared to a lot of the people at the company, I'm very like tech light. Um, I can kind of understand some of the things. We work in a program called Unity, which is a game development platform, a very common one. And basically, Andrew, who's our lead programmer and the other co-owner slash um, founder of Only by Midnight, uh, he and the programmers basically like wrote custom interface for me so I can go and put in dialogue without having to know what I'm doing. And it's just like lots of drop down menus for like what character is talking and like, are there any conditions? Like something has to be in the room with them before they'll say this. And then a space where I can type what they say. So that makes it easy for me to do the job. But, what you really need is creativity. You need to love games and want to make them. Passion is really important. It gets kind of a bad rap. I think people have been moving away from the idea of passion being necessary component for creation, but I don't know. I can't make things unless I really love them. So being enthusiastic about what you're doing is really important. And having an idea of what you want to say, you know, what do you want to do with this product? And it doesn't have to be anything deep. It doesn't have to be like you're changing the world with your video game, but it's got to be something you believe in and that it's going to carry you through development because it takes a long time to make a video game. It's very difficult. But yeah, you don't actually need to know. It helps. It
Mm.
definitely helps, but you don't need to be super tech savvy or a programmer to make video games.
Coming back to what you want to say with the video game, is that similar to what you were talking about earlier about theme?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like a
I
mission
used to be really
statement?
skeptical about theme. Like when I was in high school and starting out as a writer, I was like, what is theme? I don't know. Theme's so mysterious. And your teacher would say, what is the theme of this book? I don't know. And then you'd say something and they'd say, no, that's wrong. It's something else. And I'm like, well, I give up. I don't know what theme is. But the older and more experienced I get, the more I work in writing, the more I see theme as just what you're saying with the writing that you're doing. When someone comes to the end of the game or the end of your book, they think, "Oh, the writer was trying to tell me this." And it's reflected in the plot, in the characters, in video games, in the art, even the mechanics. Negotiate is a game about building relationships. And so one of the interface screens you have in the game is a relationship network where you see all the little people in the game and there's little lines connecting them to show if they're friends or if they have shared likes or dislikes or who's boss. And originally it was going to look more like a topographical map, but relationships just became too important to the game. So we revised the way the screen looked so that it was more accessible to the player to look at it and say, oh, this is how these people are related. And you don't have to you don't have to be trying to sell your vision of what your piece of art is trying to say. I don't think it's necessarily about convincing people to agree with you. It's more like presenting a point of view on the world or asking a question about a world. You mentioned heated arguments before. My boss, Jen, and I are both highly creative people in very different directions. And she's much more interested in open ended questions and exploring ideas without committing to like a particular point of view and encouraging the player to just think about things in a critical way. And I'm like, we want to say this with our game, but yeah. And then she's like, no. And we have to kind of go back and forth. How much detail do we put in? How solid are we with some of these messages and how much do we want to leave interpretive for the player to sort of engage with however they want and kind of make the calls that they want to make.
That's really cool. So, another thing to ask too that I've been asking everybody, and I imagine that because your work is a little bit more solitary, that maybe this didn't change it very much, but how did the recent COVID-19 pandemic affect your work and your job?
Me personally, differently than the industry, it
Yeah.
it had a strange effect on the industry in that video games suddenly became really, really popular. If people were quarantining, if they were, in lockdown or they had to stay home, events weren't happening, public events and things like that. Video games is one thing that people could easily do at home that they could enjoy and be a distraction from the world uh, around them. And not only that, but it sort of was the impetus behind a whole new genre of social co-op games. The biggest one that came out during the pandemic was called Among Us. And you can join in with your friends and family in different locations and all play together remotely in the same computer game. And so it became a really popular genre for people to try and connect virtually in a new way. And so sales of video games, kind of skyrocketed. And for indie game development, there was not as much impact, I'd say, compared to like the AAA studios, like, Sony or Microsoft. because we were already generally pretty remote and we already had pretty small teams. And we were already working to create escapist media, which was in high demand at the time.
I bet.
Now, when things are sort of, going into this new normal, people are going back to the office and public events are opening up again. It We're seeing, the effects again on the industry where the cost of living is going up, labor is more expensive, utilities are more expensive. People aren't buying as many video games. They're going out and socializing and doing live events and stuff instead. I heard a statistic recently. I was at a conference called the Alberta Game um, Series, and the keynote speaker mentioned how I want to say in 2021, people were buying an average of like 7 games a month or something like that. And I should look up the actual fact before I start spouting it out. But and then this year it's down to like 2.7 games, like not even a full round number. So it's dropped substantially the amount of games that people are buying and the money that's going into the industry.
Hmm.
There's a lot of political issues around it too in Alberta. Um, we had an interactive digital media tax credit that went away a few years ago. And um, there's challenges. There's a lot of challenges. We're very lucky only by midnight that we have a really great, solid team, that we do have funding for our video games. So we don't have to worry about not being able to finish it. But for a lot of indie game developers right now, it's kind of a dicey time to be making games, just coming off of like this big sort of boom that we had. And now trying to find our new place in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I can absolutely imagine that demand would go through the roof during that time, but I didn't expect a reduction of quite that much. But as you mentioned, the economic situation, especially in Canada right now, is a huge factor in that, especially considering that video games would be considered a non essential or a luxury item. Hmm.
Yeah, and a lot of video gaming right now is community. People want to talk about it online. They want to, play co-op online. They want to meet with their friends and family and play like fun party games online. And when you can go out and meet your friends and family in person, the demand for that kind of drops. And when people have less spending money, the demand for, like you said, luxury entertainment goods drops. So,
Hmm. Yeah. Uh, Can you tell me about like a really memorable or really funny experience that you had in your role? It doesn't need to be in this job. It can be in one of the previous if you prefer.
oh, I have so many. Game development is such a great industry. I love it. Like I can come to work every day and I never know what I'm gonna experience. And on our social media right now, we're doing a thing like every couple weeks where we have from the change log. So a change log is when you're in the program and you submit changes. There's a thing called version controls, basically to make sure multiple people aren't in the code changing it all at once and like overwriting each other. And it gets submitted automatically to our Discord, and it just pops up a list of like, Amber made these changes or Andrew made these changes. And out of context, some of them are just like really, they make me laugh anyway. So we have cleaning robots in our game called Groombas. And our animator keeps posting updates that say things like happy Groomba wobble, where she's trying to make the Groomba go like wobble back and forth. Or she kept doing updates to Angry Stomp, which was the person in the game doing an angry stomp to show their emotional state. And every time she would post something about Angry Stomp, I'd get cha-cha slides stuck in my head. Probably my favorite funny memory on the right, like personally on the writing side, was when I worked at Beamdog and we did Siege of Dragonspear was the game we were working on. And we had a lot of voice acting for it. Part of my job was to go to the voice booth and we show up with the scripts. There was 3 of us, me, my co-writer, Andrew, not the same Andrew from Only by Midnight, different Andrew, and my boss, Phil. And we basically sit there all day with the script. And the actors would come in and record their lines, and we'd be there to like give them feedback or tell them how to pronounce a certain word, because in Dungeons and Dragons, there's a lot of weird words. Um, or, say we decided like that doesn't sound right and we changed the line on the fly and get them to record a different version. This took a long time. It was like a month's worth of of work. And
Sounds like it.
but it was fun. It was interesting. And that's one of those, like, you don't know video game people do this, but that was one of my jobs, was like VO director. That's voiceover.
Mm.
But anyway, there's a local actor in Edmonton who's like very famous in the industry as a voice actor. His name's Mark Meir. And he was the voice of the male version of Commander Shepard in the Mass Effect video games, are like a super popular video game series. And he's done a lot of other stuff too. And he's just like an awesome guy. And I met him for the first time doing this VO work. We worked together for a couple days. That was fun. And in video games, in role playing games, I should say, uh, like Beamdog made, and like the whole Dungeons and Dragons Baldur's Gate series. It's very common to have romances with some of the what we call NPCs, or non-player characters. So you're in the game, you're controlling your little guy. They meet somebody and they like them, and they can have a romance, which is usually like flirty dialogue and sometimes some sexy cutscenes or whatever.
Mhm.
So the character Mark Meir was voicing was a romanceable character. I had written all the romances for the game. We show up, we start doing our recording. He gets to this part in the script, and there's this moment where I realize that I'm sitting with my co-writer and my boss while Mark Meir reads like the sexy dialogue that I wrote. And it was like having a teacher like intercept your love note in class and read it out loud.
Oh,
Like,
no.
I was just suddenly like, oh my God, like, because I tried to write it to be, really like romantic and vulnerable and sexy. Like I put my own spin on it. And Mark Meir is doing this amazing job with this like sexy voice and trying to be like really like intimate. And I couldn't do it. Like, I was like, I'm sorry, I have to go. And I just left the sound booth. But there's nowhere to go because it was the tiny recording studio. So I went and sat in the stairwell, texted my co-writer, and I was just like, let me know when he's done the romances. I'm sorry, I can't be there for it. And he was like, okay. It was hilarious. That was
That
happy
is
that I
funny.
had somebody like read my lines out loud with me right there before.
And how did it feel when you saw the finished product in the video game? Was that like distanced enough? Was it the in-person thing?
Yeah, because then you're by yourself,
Yeah.
and once something's out in the world, a lesson I learned at some point, I don't even know who taught me this, but thank you very much. It might have been my friend Mike from Paizo, which is who published the Dragon magazine back in the day. Mike McCarter, he was an awesome guy. But it was that once something is sold, once I've turned it over, it's gone to print, the money's in my bank, I forget it. Like, it doesn't even belong to me anymore. It belongs to the world. The players can enjoy it. I'm not a writer who, tries to go on social media or anything and try and explain my work or try and like tell people how to enjoy it or convince them they're wrong if they, think it's bad. Um, I can't. I have to focus on the next project. I have to like keep my energy going forward. And so even once like Siege of Dragonspear was out, I don't think I ever played it. Like, once it was released, I had done enough with it that I was like, it is done. It is in the world. Please, everyone, enjoy it. And now I'm going to focus on the next thing. So
I imagine it could be easy to let yourself get caught into that kind of a spiral of backward looking with it.
totally, yeah,
Like, I didn't mean that, or, that's not how
mhm.
it's supposed to be. I could definitely see that being an energy suck and a time
Yeah. I
suck.
don't read comments. I don't read reviews. If you didn't like it, I'm sorry. I hope you find something else you like.
I'm sure they will. There's lots out there.
There's so much. We're just talking about there's so much space in the industry right now.
Exactly. So, how would your parents describe what you do?
Well, it's funny. I actually moved back in with my parents during COVID. So
Mhm.
my husband and I were living in Burnaby. And then during the first year of lockdowns, we kind of were like, all right, this isn't going away anywhere soon. So I called my parents. We moved back home to their house in Alberta. And so I share an office with my dad. So he sees exactly what I do all day. And and he shares a computer with my mom. So often my mom or my dad will be in here like working on their computer while I'm, in a meeting or giving a presentation or something. I had to put a sticky note on the door saying like, I'm in a podcast, don't come in until I'm
Oh,
done.
yeah. Like the
Because
red
otherwise
lights
my mom would
outside the
be like,
studio.
"Yeah, but you-" and it's fun, it's really fun involving them in my world. And if they had to explain to someone else what I did, they just say she rents video games. But my dad sometimes says, if I was like a little kid again and someone says, "What's your daughter gonna be when she grows up?" He's like, "I didn't even know this was a job. Like, I didn't know this was a thing you could do." And, it's really fun being able to share my triumphs and my challenges, like, with my whole family. So, they're very proud of me.
Oh, I'm sure they are. Cool. Yeah, I never would have thought it would have been a job either. And that's the whole point of of this podcast is discovering these different jobs.
I'm so lucky, like, every day I'm like, "How do I even" um, you mentioned, like, one of the misconceptions being playing video games all day, but a couple weeks ago, we're looking at doing it's not making an alliance, as I call it, with another indie game studio, here in Edmonton who's doing some work that, we could benefit from, and we're doing some work they could benefit from. And so my boss basically said, they've got this game coming out. They're going to give you a demo build, and I need you to like play it really thoroughly, give them really good feedback, and like really thorough feedback, not like positive feedback.
Yeah.
I was like, oh no, how will I ever manage to accomplish this terrible task? And
Yes.
then I just played like a really awesome video game for like a week,
Yes.
and wrote all my like thoughts about it. So there are perks, definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, I get to go to conventions and talk to other amazing creators. I get to make up these cool stories and think of these. There's a term in video game development called emergent, which
Mhm.
um, basically means it's a new kind of gameplay mechanic that doesn't have an established genre or isn't easily graspable by players. So if you're playing like a violent video game where you have to shoot people or hit them with a sword, that's pretty standard. If you give it to somebody, they're probably gonna figure out how to play it pretty easily because there's lots of combat-based games in the industry. Negotiate is emergent gameplay, so it's not very clear how to play it. It's a lot of tutorializing. It's a lot of, like, teaching the player, like, how to think about the challenges in the game so that they can overcome it. And then, um, coming to that with the idea that there may be players of lots of different skill levels, who just aren't used to video games at all and might have trouble with things like where are the buttons on my controller or how do I select a card? And players who may be very experienced with like card-based mechanics and need like a little bit less tutorialization. So coming up with like these emergent gameplays, these really interesting stories that maybe aren't being told by other games. One of the questions we asked during playtesting is, what does this game make you think of? And so many people are like, I don't know, like it's weird, it's different. It's cool. And that's awesome to hear. Makes marketing a little tricky, but the
Yeah,
challenge I'm
it would.
willing to take.
So, if you had to choose a favorite video game, you're on a deserted island and somehow you have electricity and you had to pick one game to play for the rest of eternity until the lifeboats come, what would you choose?
I don't even know, like, there's so many good video games. The one that made a big impact on me in the last, 10 years or so was a game called Disco Elysium, which came out I don't know, time is a flat circle now, like, in
Yeah.
this, like, COVID world, I'm like, was it 10 years ago? Was it 100 years ago? I'm not sure. It came out a while ago, and, it's a text-based video game where you're an amnesiac person guy. You wake up in a trashed hotel room, and you realize you're the one who trashed it in, like, an epic party bender the night before. And as you stumble around the world trying to figure out what the heck happened and regain your memories, you learn you're actually a police detective, and you're there to solve a murder, and your partner's, like, waiting for you to go. And you're like, "I literally can't remember anything." And he's like, "We don't have time for this. The body's in the back." And it was a really unique game. It had a beautiful art style. It had exceptional writing. Obviously, I'm drawn to writing. And, I play it again and again, and it's a big inspiration for the next secret game that we're making after Negotiate is done. So that's gotta be at the top of my list. I mentioned Papers, Please. That's a fantastic game. Um, if you're the kind of person who doesn't play video games very often and, you just kind of wanna get your feet wet, I love Stardew Valley. It's easy, fun. It's what's called a cozy video game where it's very, like, sweet and relaxing.
Mhm.
And, um And then on the AAA side, the Cyberpunk 2077 came out a few years ago, and it's one of like my all-time favorite games. And that's very violent and very difficult if you've never played video games before. It's a lot of like driving around and using a variety of weapons to put an end to hopefully bad people. So my tastes are wide and varied.
That's really cool. It's cool that you've got like everything from the cozy video game to the really violent video game that's on your roster there. And thinking about that, the Amnesiac video game, that to me sounds terrifying. Would it happen in real life?
It would be, but you know, it was first of all they completely play it for laughs in the
Mhm.
game. So if you
Okay.
fail the role to remember your own name because you don't even know who you are, you get to the chance to make up a fake one, and you're like, I am a detective. My name is Raphael Ambrose Cousteau, and which I totally leaned into, and I was like, no, my name is Raphael, even when I actually learned the character's real name. Um, but it also like the writers were very clever in that they made it. It was a built-in reason why you as a player could ask questions like, "What country are we in? What year is it? And who is this guy who's murdered? And what's the political state of this place we're in?" It's a very political game. It has a lot of bad language, and it does use slurs, so if you're looking at it thinking it's just gonna be a humorous game, there is some, like, content warning.
Okay.
But, it's not violent, it's not gory, and, the rating is exceptional. It won, like, a lot of awards, so, uh, yeah.
I think I'm going to become a gamer.
Do. Like, there's so many fun games. Oh, I can definitely recommend you some wonderful games out there.
That'd be great.
Wonderful
It's been a
indie
long
games.
time since my Super
Uh,
Nintendo days.
yeah, I got a PlayStation, 5 for the first time last year. It's my first console since I think the Super Nintendo.
Mhm.
And ironically, because there was just one game I really wanted to play, and it was a PlayStation exclusive. And I completely justified it by I work in the video game industry. I have to keep on top of what, consoles are doing, right?
Research, man.
So for Christmas, my husband and a friend of mine pulled together and got me a PlayStation 5 with Horizon Forbidden West, which is an amazing game with um, a female protagonist. And I believe it's got a female lead, a woman who's a lead writer for the company as well. And I'm a really big supporter of women in gaming too. So
Hmm.
that's great.
Yeah. Well, I should probably wrap it up about here. Now, Amber, if people want to find you, find your writing, where can they find you?
I do have a website. It's amberescott.com. So all my stuff is on there. And then Only by Midnight, we have a website for our video game too, which is Negotiate, but with the AI flipped because you play an AI in the game. So it's negotiate.com. And you can find all the updates on Negotiate there.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being a part of the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great fun.
I'll probably end up drinking wine with you.
We could bike for a little bit and then drink wine. Like we
Yeah,
could
we could do that.
compromise.
Yeah, we could balance. We could balance it out.